So you want to start shooting in a log picture profile. So you just pick up your camera and start shooting. There's a couple of steps before we get there. Let's go over what they are. So today we're looking at how to use SLog, specifically SLog 2 on Sony cameras and the proper way of using it and making sure that you utilize the sensor that your camera has. The Sony Alpha range has such a powerful range of cameras, and making sure that you're utilizing that amazing sensor that it has is key in making sure that your SLog footage is the best it can be. But before we even get to the how, we need to know the why. So why would you want to shoot in SLog? And what even is SLog? What is this video even about? In short, SLog is a form of flat picture profile that utilizes the sensor at its most amount of capabilities. Bad wording, but you get my drift. The sensor that's inside your camera that captures the image is an amazing piece of technology, and depending what picture profile you use, you can capture more data through that. A flat picture profile such as SLog 2 will enable you to do this. This picture profile basically has very low contrast, very low saturation, and you shoot it in such a specific way that means all the data that your sensor captures in both the highlights and in the shadows is more than you'd get from just a basic standard, just out of the box kind of shot. This means when it comes to post-production, there's so much room for making the image look exactly how you want it. Color is such a powerful way of telling stories. By having a very low contrast and a flat image, you have total control over the entirety of your image. So you know basically pretty much what a flat picture profile is and why you might want to use it. But what do? Do you just switch it on and go? Unfortunately, there are a couple of steps. One is more one that I personally like to do, and I've seen a couple of people out there do it, but when you go into your picture profile, it's upping the saturation within the camera by 20. This is just because when you come into post-production, saturation specifically can break. When you pull it up, you get this weird kind of, where there's two colors gradienting against a wall, for example, you might get similar to behind me here. That gradient of color would become very pixelated. So by putting the saturation up in the camera a little bit, this negates that issue. But the one key thing here is overexposing your shot by 2 stops. See what that little EV is on your camera? Where it sometimes flashes at you and it says +1, 0, 0, -2. You want that to always be going at +2. But to properly understand this and show you why we want to do this, we're gonna head out to the park. Let's go. We are at the park at the minute, and it's a good time to kind of display what different stops of exposure will do to affect your footage. So we're going to do one at +2, +1, and then at 0. We've got a spot here which is quite nice as far as we've got dark shadows and we've got some high exposure with the sun, or with the sky even. So we're going to use that to depict how different stops can affect what you can return when you fuck around with settings. So let's go. And what we're going to do now is take that back to the office, and what we're going to do is basically mess around with the shadows and the highlights to show you how each of those 3 different stops will affect kind of the detail and the kind of the information that was stored in there. So the information, the shadows and the highlights, and how having these different levels of stop will affect what is stored, what is captured, and basically how much noise you're going to get in those shadows. Whilst we're here, let's do some FPV practice. So we're back from the park. Technically that was the other weekend, but who needs to know? Hope you enjoyed the FPV section as well. I'm kind of through the process of learning it. Where I shot that a few weeks ago, I've improved a little bit. I probably did include some other shots during the editing phase of this. So if you did enjoy that and would like to see more of the journey, let me know down below. But let's get on with the footage. So as you can see here, I've brought it in to Premiere Pro. We have got the 3 shots. We have our +2, our +1 and our +0. Now what I've done for all of these is bring them, as you can see by the limitory scopes, relatively the same. The 2's a little higher, we could probably bring down the highlights on number 2, but as you can see the limitory scopes are showing it that they're relatively the exact same look. So if you have a look at this, if I turn off my adjustment layer, that takes off just the conversion LUT, so it turns everything from SLog to Rec 709, which is the standard picture profile for most everything. Then each of these has their own personal limitory scope on it. So if I switch this one off, you can see that's what the +0 looks like, what our +1 looks like, and our +2. So if we scroll through these now, we can see there's that big difference kind of in how the three of them look. So now, as you can see, if we're gonna specifically zoom into the shadows here, when we're on +0, when we bring back that, when we lift it up, we can see there's a lot more noise, it's a lot grainier, it's just not as good quality as our base +2. And if you have a look at the +2, effectively what we've done, that +0 is now been brought up to a 2. So those shadows in the corner over there are the same, they have the same exposure, but they look significantly healthier, as it were. And then the same for our middle section here. As we bring back that light and lift up those shadows, it's just not as good quality, and we're not capturing as much data as we would in that +2. Specifically, if in this corner section here, in that +2, we're going to be able to bring those leaves back. We're going to be able to see those leaves. Whereas in the +1, we can see them slightly, but in the +0, especially around this section here, they're very just not there. And then finally, when we bring back that color, that kind of, when we do the conversion LUT on everything, we can really see kind of like the differences in those shadows and how like just the entire look of the image. That one is a very grainy look because we're trying to bring it up to normal exposure. This one, again, our blacks are very flat and just don't have much detail in them. But then when we compare it to that +2 at the end, granted I didn't shoot the trees as much, but you can see in the corner here, there's so much more detail and just data being stored in those small sections. And in short, that is why you want to make sure that you are shooting that +2. By having that +2 being shot at, you're going to have the data, it's all going to be there, and we can see that through this. And by being able to compare the three, hopefully that helps you guys and gives you a bit of a practical show of exposure and SLog. Let's spin around and finish this off over there. So we've seen the differences that the shots can make. We can see in those higher exposure levels that we have more scope. We can bring those shadows up further without having grain. In theory, if it was a very highlighty kind of day and I'd exposed for the highlights, then we would have seen that we could have brought those down significantly further because there was more data to play with. In short, that's all you're doing. You're enabling your camera to have more data to play with in post-production. But then that also does beg the question, what do we expose for? Do we expose for the highlights or the shadows or the face? What do we pick to get that +2 on, in short? Basically, it's down to what you're shooting. Do you want those shadows to be reclaimable? Do you want that sky to come back? Go for what your priority is for the image. Sometimes, yes, you can do it all. You grab yourself an ND filter and that will massively, massively help you, because it means you can bring the sky back down whilst also having the shadows lifted. But fundamentally, it is down to what you want out of your film. So I hope this has helped you. I do apologise for the harsher lighting today. I usually have my softbox up, but today I've just got a ring light because it's 11:15 and I want to do this quite quickly. So you're dealing with a ring light like a TikToker. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to give it a like, chuck a comment down below if you have, and subscribe to the channel. I've got some really exciting content coming up in the way of FPV drones and a new camera that I've been lucky to be given for free. So be sure to stick around for that. But until next time, take care.